It was one of those perfect Saturday mornings where everything just felt right. The sun was streaming through the windows of Rosie's Diner, that cozy little breakfast spot that had been serving the best pancakes in town for over 30 years. The smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air, mixing with the sound of clinking dishes and friendly chatter. In a corner booth near the window sat Maya Thompson with her 2 kids. Her son Daniel, 8 years old, was practically bouncing in his seat with excitement. His little sister Lily, just 6, was coloring on the paper placemat with the crayons the waitress had brought over. Maya couldn't help but smile as she watched them. This was what life was all about, these simple, beautiful moments they were celebrating. Daniel had brought home his report card yesterday, and it was filled with A's and B's. Maya had promised him his favorite breakfast if he kept his grades up, and here they were. The kid had earned it. She'd ordered a stack of chocolate chip pancakes for Daniel, strawberry ones for Lily, and kept it simple with scrambled eggs and toast for herself. Maya looked like any other mom on a Saturday morning. Jeans, a comfortable sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no fuss. She'd been working crazy hours lately, and this weekend was supposed to be just about her kids. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated, just mom time. The waitress, a sweet older woman named Betty who'd been working at Rosie's forever, brought over their food with a warm smile. She always remembered her regulars, and Maya's family had been coming here since the kids were tiny. Betty winked at Daniel when she set down his pancakes, loaded with whipped cream just like he liked them. For about 20 minutes, everything was perfect. Daniel told his mom all about the science project he wanted to do for the upcoming fair. Something about volcanoes, though Maya suspected it was really just an excuse to make things explode. Lily was more interested in her strawberries than conversation, but every so often she'd look up and smile, her face sticky with syrup. Maya felt that warm feeling in her chest, the one that made all the long nights and hard work worth it. She was a single mom, and yeah, it was tough sometimes, really tough. But moments like these reminded her why she pushed herself so hard. Her kids were happy, healthy, and safe. That was everything. Then the bell above the diner door chimed and 2 police officers walked in. Maya barely glanced up at first. Cops came into diners all the time. It wasn't unusual, nothing to worry about. She took another sip of her coffee and listened to Daniel explain why his volcano needed to be at least 3 feet tall for maximum effect. But then she noticed something. One of the officers was staring at their table. Not just looking, staring. He was a big guy, probably in his 40s, with the kind of face that looked like it was permanently set in a scowl. His partner was younger, seemed a bit uncomfortable, kept shifting his weight from foot to foot. The older officer, his name tag read Hansen, said something to his partner and started walking toward Maya's table. Her stomach tightened slightly. She'd learned to trust her instincts over the years, and something about the way this guy was moving didn't feel right. He stopped right at their booth, standing there in a way that felt almost aggressive. Maya looked up at him, keeping her face neutral and friendly. Maybe he just wanted to say hello or something. Give it the benefit of the doubt. "Morning, officer," she said pleasantly. "Can I help you with something?" Hansen didn't return the smile. "We've had some reports of suspicious activity in this area. I'm going to need to see some identification." Maya felt her heart rate pick up slightly, but she kept her voice calm. "Suspicious activity? We're just having breakfast." She gestured at the table at her kids with their syrupy faces. "Is there a problem?" "I'll ask the questions, ma'am." "ID, please." The way he said ma'am didn't sound respectful at all. It sounded like an insult. Maya noticed that other people in the diner were starting to look over now. She could feel her kids tensing up beside her. Daniel had stopped talking about his volcano. Lily's crayon had stopped moving. "Officer, I'm happy to cooperate, but I'd like to understand what this is about. We're just eating breakfast." "We haven't done anything wrong." Hansen's face darkened. "You're being difficult, ma'am." "That's what this is about. Now, I've asked you twice for your identification. Are you going to comply, or do we have a problem here?" Maya's mind was racing. She knew the law. She knew her rights. In most situations, you didn't have to show ID unless you were driving, or if an officer had reasonable suspicion of a crime. Eating pancakes wasn't a crime. But she also knew that sometimes being right didn't matter if the person with the badge decided to make your life difficult. She thought about her kids. They were watching, listening to every word. What was she teaching them in this moment? "Officer Hansen," she said, reading his name tag clearly so he knew she was paying attention. "I'd like to understand what reasonable suspicion you have that requires me to show identification. We're customers here. We're eating a meal we paid for and we haven't caused any disturbance." The younger officer, Bradley, according to his tag, took a step closer. "Ma'am, it would just be easier if you cooperated." "I am cooperating," Maya said, her voice still calm but firmer now. "I'm asking a legitimate question. What crime do you suspect us of committing?" Hanson leaned down, putting his hands on their table, getting into Maya's personal space. She could smell coffee on his breath. "I've been doing this job for 20 years, and I know trouble when I see it. You're loitering. You're creating a disturbance, and now you're refusing to cooperate with a police officer. That's 3 strikes right there." Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. Loitering. They were paying customers. Creating a disturbance? They'd been sitting quietly eating breakfast. She glanced around the diner again. Several people had their phones out now, she noticed. At least someone was documenting this. "We're not loitering," Maya said, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. "We ordered food, we're eating it, and we'll pay our bill just like everyone else here. And the only disturbance I'm aware of is this conversation." Lily started to whimper softly. She was scared, Maya could tell. Daniel reached over and took his sister's hand, trying to be brave, but Maya could see the fear in his eyes too. They'd never seen their mom confronted like this before. Hell, Maya had never been confronted like this before, at least not in front of her children. Betty, the waitress, hurried over, looking distressed. "Officers, these folks are regulars here. They're good people. They haven't caused any problems at all." Hanson barely glanced at her. "This is police business, ma'am." "Step back." Maya made a decision. She'd give him her ID. Not because she had to, but because she didn't want this to escalate in front of her children any more than it already had. She reached slowly for her purse, making sure her movements were visible and clear. "I'm going to get my wallet now," she said clearly. "That's more like it," Hanson said with a smirk that made Maya's blood boil. But just as her hand touched her purse, Hanson added, "And I'm going to need you and your kids to step outside while we sort this out." That's when Maya knew this wasn't going to end quietly. This officer wasn't looking for cooperation. He was looking for confrontation. And for some reason she couldn't quite understand, he'd decided her family was going to be his target today. The perfect Saturday morning was about to become something else entirely, something her kids would remember for the rest of their lives. Maya just hoped she could protect them from whatever was coming next. Maya looked Officer Hanson directly in the eye. "I'm not taking my children outside. We haven't done anything wrong and we're finishing our breakfast." She heard her own voice, steady and firm, and hoped her kids couldn't hear the way her heart was hammering in her chest. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. But she'd spent years learning how to stay calm under pressure. Right now, that training was the only thing keeping her from showing the fear and anger churning inside her. Hanson's face turned red, actually red. "You're refusing to comply with a lawful order?" "I'm refusing an unlawful order," Maya corrected him. "And I'm asking you again, what crime do you suspect us of committing?" The diner had gone almost completely quiet now. Everyone was watching. Maya could feel dozens of eyes on them, but she couldn't worry about that right now. She had to protect her kids. Lily was crying softly and Daniel's hand was shaking as he held his sister's. "Mommy, I'm scared," Lily whispered. Maya reached over and squeezed her daughter's other hand. "It's okay, baby. Everything's going to be okay." But she wasn't sure she believed it herself. "That's it," Hanson said, his voice getting louder. "You're under arrest for obstruction and resisting." "Resisting what?" Maya's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "I'm sitting in a booth eating breakfast with my children." Before she could react, Hanson reached across the table and grabbed Maya's arm. Not gently. His fingers dug into her skin and he yanked her toward the edge of the booth. The sudden violence of it shocked her. This was really happening. This police officer was actually trying to physically remove her from a restaurant booth in front of her terrified children. "Get your hands off me." Maya tried to pull her arm free, but Hanson's grip was iron tight. "You have no right to touch me." Daniel jumped up, his voice cracking. "Leave my mom alone." "Sit down, kid," Hanson barked at him. That was when Officer Bradley finally stepped forward. He'd been standing there the whole time, looking increasingly uncomfortable but not doing anything to stop his partner. Now he moved toward the booth, reaching for Maya's other arm. "Ma'am, please, just come with us and we can sort this all out at the station." Bradley said, and at least he sounded somewhat apologetic, but that didn't change what he was doing. Sort what out? Maya was struggling now, not to escape but just to free herself from Hanson's painful grip. There's nothing to sort out. We're eating breakfast. The booth's table was wedged between them, and in the chaos of Hanson pulling and Maya resisting, the whole thing shook violently. A waitress had been approaching with a fresh pot of coffee for another table, trying to navigate through the crowd of concerned onlookers that had formed. She'd stopped to watch the scene unfolding, the coffee pot in her hand forgotten. Then everything happened at once. Bradley, trying to help his partner, stepped forward quickly and bumped hard into the waitress. She stumbled, trying to catch herself, and the coffee pot flew from her hands. It seemed to happen in slow motion, the dark liquid arcing through the air, catching the light from the window. The scalding hot coffee hit their table like a wave. It splashed across the surface, soaking their food, their napkins, everything. But worse, so much worse, it splashed directly onto Lily's arm and chest. Some of it hit Daniel's shoulder and lap. The screams were immediate and piercing. Lily shrieked in pain, a sound that cut through Maya like a knife. Daniel cried out too, jumping up from the booth, trying to get away from the burning liquid that was soaking through his shirt. My babies. Maya jerked free from Hanson's grip, not caring about anything except getting to her children. Oh God, my babies. Lily's arm was already turning red where the coffee had hit her. The little girl was screaming and crying, clutching at her arm, her face twisted in agony. Maya grabbed napkins, anything, trying to blot at the coffee, but she knew that wasn't right. She needed cold water, ice. She needed to help them. I need ice. Someone get me ice. Maya's voice was loud and desperate now, all composure gone. And call an ambulance now. Betty rushed over with a pitcher of ice water and clean towels. Other customers jumped up to help. One woman ran to get the first aid kit from behind the counter. The manager came running out from the back, his face pale with shock. But Hanson, incredibly, unbelievably, was still trying to take control of the situation. Everyone stepped back. This is a police matter, he shouted. Maya whirled on him, her eyes blazing with a fury she didn't know she had in her. You did this. You hurt my children. This wouldn't have happened if you just cooperated, Hanson shot back. And the sheer nerve of that statement, the absolute refusal to take any responsibility, made something snap inside Maya. But she couldn't focus on him right now. Her children needed her. Lily's sobs were heartbreaking, and Daniel was trying so hard to be brave, but tears were streaming down his face. The coffee had burned through his shirt and his skin was bright red. Baby, it's okay, Mommy's here, Maya kept saying over and over, as she gently poured ice water over Lily's arm. The skin was already blistering. Second-degree burns at least. Her little girl's perfect soft skin was burned because of this, because of that man's pride and prejudice. Bradley was on his radio calling for an ambulance, at least having the sense to do that much. The other customers in the diner were in an uproar now. People were shouting at the officers, their phones out, recording everything. Maya heard several people saying they'd seen the whole thing, that the police had started it, that this was wrong. Rosie herself, the owner of the diner, came out from the kitchen. She was a tough old lady who'd run this place through good times and bad, and she looked absolutely furious. She knelt down next to Maya and helped with the kids, her experienced hands gentle as she examined their burns. Those burns need proper medical attention, Rosie said quietly to Maya. Then she looked up at Hanson with pure disgust on her face. You should be ashamed of yourself. 3 more police cars pulled up outside, sirens wailing. Backup that Hanson had called for earlier. They came rushing in expecting some kind of dangerous situation. Hands on their weapons, only to find a woman tending to her burned children, while a crowd of angry customers shouted accusations at the 2 officers. One of the new arrivals, a woman with sergeant stripes, took one look at the scene and her expression hardened. Maya saw her glance from the crying children to Hanson to the crowd of phone-wielding witnesses, and watched understanding dawn on her face. This wasn't what Hanson had told them to expect. What happened here? The sergeant demanded. Hanson started talking fast, spinning his version of events. Suspicious activity, uncooperative suspect, unfortunate accident during an arrest. But his words were drowned out by the chorus of customer voices all talking over each other, telling what they'd really seen. An innocent family harassed. A mother assaulted. Children burned because an officer couldn't control his ego. Maya wasn't listening to any of it. She was focused entirely on Lily and Daniel. The ice water was helping a little, But Lily's sobs hadn't stopped, and the blistering on her arm looked worse by the second. Daniel's burn wasn't quite as bad, but it still looked painful. And the psychological trauma of what they'd just witnessed was going to last a lot longer than any physical injury. "Where's that ambulance?" Maya called out, trying to keep her voice steady for her kid's sake. 5 minutes out, someone answered. 5 minutes felt like forever. Maya kept the ice water flowing gently over Lily's arm, whispering soothing words while Betty stayed with Daniel, taking care of his burns. The little boy kept looking at his sister, his face full of worry and confusion. He was 8 years old, and he'd just watched police officers hurt his family. How was Maya supposed to explain that to him? How was she supposed to make him feel safe again? The sergeant, whose name tag read Chen, had separated Hanson and Bradley from the family. She was talking to witnesses, taking notes, and her expression got darker with every story she heard. Maya noticed the sergeant glance over at her several times, and there was something in those looks. Recognition, maybe? Or just concern? Hanson was still trying to justify himself, his voice carrying across the diner. She was resisting arrest. She refused to comply with direct orders. She was eating breakfast. An older man shouted back at him. "I saw the whole thing. You started harassing her for no reason. I have 14 witnesses here who say you initiated physical contact without cause," Sergeant Chen said coldly to Hanson, "and 2 injured minors as a result of your actions." The ambulance finally arrived, and 2 paramedics rushed in with their equipment. They were professional and gentle as they examined both kids. Lily's burns were definitely second degree, they confirmed. She'd need to go to the hospital for treatment. Daniel's were less severe, first degree, but they wanted to take him in too just to be safe. Maya climbed into the ambulance with her children, one arm around each of them. As the doors started to close, she looked back at the diner one last time, at the crowd of people who'd witnessed everything. At the officers standing there, Hanson still looking defiant, Bradley looking like he wanted to disappear, and Chen looking disgusted with both of them, and Maya made a decision. She'd been trying to stay calm, to de-escalate, to protect her kids from trauma by not making a big scene, but that time was over. These officers had assaulted her and injured her children. They'd humiliated her family in public, traumatized her babies, and showed no remorse at all. They were about to find out who they'd just messed with. But first, her kids needed medical care. Everything else could wait. Almost everything. The emergency room was chaos when they arrived. Lily was still crying, her small body shaking with sobs that broke Maya's heart into pieces. Daniel sat quietly now, almost too quietly, staring at nothing while tears rolled silently down his cheeks. The paramedics had done what they could during the short ambulance ride, but seeing her babies in pain like this was destroying Maya from the inside out. A nurse rushed over as soon as they wheeled Lily in on the gurney. She took one look at the burns and started calling for the doctor, her voice urgent. Within seconds, they were surrounded by medical staff, all moving with practiced efficiency. "Mom, I need you to step back so we can work," a young doctor said gently, guiding Maya aside. "We're going to take good care of her." Maya nodded but couldn't make herself move very far. She kept one hand on Daniel's shoulder, keeping him close, while she watched the medical team clean and treat Lily's burns. Her little girl's screams of pain with each touch of the wound made Maya want to scream too. "I want to file a police report," Maya said suddenly to one of the nurses. Her voice came out harder than she intended, sharp with barely controlled rage. "Those officers did this to my children." The nurse nodded sympathetically. "The hospital automatically reports incidents involving minors and police. We've already made the call. Someone from internal affairs should be here soon." Should be. Maya almost laughed at that. She knew how these things went. Police investigating police rarely turned out well for the victims. She'd seen it too many times in her line of work. But they didn't know who she was yet. Nobody did. Maybe it was time to change that. Daniel tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, is Lily going to be okay?" Maya knelt down so she was eye level with her son. His face was so young, so scared. He shouldn't have to deal with any of this. He should be home right now watching cartoons or playing video games, not sitting in an emergency room with burns on his shoulder because a cop couldn't handle being questioned. "She's going to be fine, baby. The doctors here are really good at what they do." Maya brushed his hair back from his forehead. "How are you feeling?" "Does it hurt?" "A little," Daniel admitted. "But I'm more worried about Lily and you. Are you okay, Mom?" The fact that her 8-year-old son was worried about her after everything that had just happened made Maya want to cry. But she held it together. She had to be strong for them. I'm okay. And I'm going to make sure nothing like this ever happens to us again. About 20 minutes later, after Lily had been given pain medication and her arm was properly dressed with burn dressings, Sergeant Chen walked into the emergency room. She still had that serious expression on her face, but there was something else there too, something Maya recognized from her own work. The sergeant was piecing things together, and she didn't like the picture forming in her mind. Chen approached Maya carefully, almost respectfully. That was interesting. Most cops didn't approach potential arrestees with that kind of deference. Mrs. Thompson, I'm Sergeant Lisa Chen. I need to ask you some questions about what happened at the diner. Maya stood up slowly, making sure Daniel was settled in a chair next to Lily's bed before she turned her full attention to the sergeant. This was it. The moment to decide how to play this. She could keep quiet about who she was, see how far the injustice would go, document it all for the case that would inevitably follow, or she could end this now. She thought about Lily's burns, about Daniel's terrified face, about all the other mothers and families who'd been through the same thing but didn't have what she had, the protection, the authority, the badge that could stop this in its tracks. Before I answer any questions, Sergeant Chen, I have some questions of my own. Maya reached into her purse slowly, deliberately, like why Officer Hansen felt he had the right to demand ID from a family eating breakfast, why he initiated physical contact when no crime had been committed, and why neither he nor his partner showed any concern when my children were burned. Ma'am, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset, Sergeant. Maya pulled out her credentials and held them up. I'm furious. Special Agent Maya Thompson, FBI. The color drained from Sergeant Chen's face. She stared at the badge and ID, then back at Maya, then at the badge again. Maya watched the implications crash over her like a wave. An FBI agent assaulted by local police. 2 minors injured. Dozens of witnesses. Video footage all over social media by now, probably. This wasn't just bad. This was a departmental nightmare. Oh my God, Chen breathed. Yeah, Maya said flatly. Oh my God is right. Behind them, a doctor who'd been checking on Lily overheard, and his eyes went wide. The nurse who'd been adjusting Lily's IV stopped mid-motion. Even Daniel perked up a little, looking at his mom with confusion and something that might have been awe. Mom, you're with the FBI? He asked. Maya gave him a tired smile. We'll talk about it later, honey. Sergeant Chen had recovered some of her composure, but she still looked like she wanted to be anywhere but here. Agent Thompson, I need to contact your supervisor, and we need to get a formal statement from you. My supervisor is already on his way. I called him from the ambulance. Maya crossed her arms. Regional Director James Morrison. He should be here within the hour. Chen nodded, pulling out her phone. I need to notify my chief immediately. This is beyond my authority level. I imagine it is, Maya said. There was no satisfaction in watching the sergeant squirm. This whole situation was just sad and infuriating and unnecessary. While Chen stepped outside to make her calls, Maya went back to her kids. A nurse was showing Lily how to work the TV remote, trying to distract her from the pain. Daniel had scooted his chair closer to his sister's bed and was holding her good hand. Does this mean you're like a secret agent? Daniel whispered to Maya, something like that. That's so cool. Then his face fell. But why didn't you tell that cop that at the diner? He would have left us alone. Maya sat down on the edge of Lily's bed, careful not to jostle her daughter's injured arm. You know what? That's a really good question, and the answer is going to be hard to understand, but I want you to think about it. Daniel nodded, his face serious. I shouldn't have to tell someone I'm with the FBI for them to treat me with respect. That cop should have treated us with respect because we're people, because we weren't doing anything wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? I think so, Daniel said slowly. Like everyone should be treated nice, not just people with special jobs? Exactly. And if the only reason that cop would have left us alone is because of my badge, then what about all the other families he might do this to? Families who don't have badges? Lily, who'd been listening even through her pain medication fog, spoke up softly. That's not fair to them. No, baby, it's not fair. And that's why Mommy is going to make sure something changes. The emergency room doors swung open, and a tall black man in an expensive suit strode in like he owned the place. James Morrison had that effect on rooms. He was in his 50s, with gray at his temples and the kind of presence that made people automatically straighten up and pay attention. Right now his face was a mask of cold fury. "Maya," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. He looked at the kids, his expression softening slightly. "How are they?" "Lily has second-degree burns. They're keeping her overnight for observation. Daniel's going to be okay, just first degree." Morrison's jaw clenched. "Who did this?" "Officers Hanson and Bradley from the local PD. It's all on video. At least a dozen witnesses." "Good." Morrison pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the deputy director. This is going to come down from the top." Sergeant Chen came back in, looking even more stressed than before. She stopped short when she saw Morrison, clearly recognizing the level of authority he carried even without seeing his credentials. "Regional Director Morrison," he said, showing his badge. "I want Officers Hanson and Bradley brought in for questioning immediately. I want every piece of video footage from that diner secured as evidence. And I want your chief of police here within the hour for a formal discussion about civil rights violations." Chen looked like she might be sick. "Sir, I've already suspended both officers pending investigation. The chief is on his way. Not good enough. I want them arrested. Assault on a federal officer. Assault on minors. Civil rights violations. Failure to render aid." Morrison's voice was ice cold. "This ends today." Maya touched his arm gently. "James, the kids," he took a breath, visibly calming himself. "You're right. I'm sorry." He turned to Daniel and Lily, his expression warming. "Hey there, you two. I'm sorry about what happened to you. But I promise you the people who did this are going to answer for it." "Are you my mom's boss?" Daniel asked. "I am." "Is she in trouble for not showing her badge?" Morrison actually smiled at that. "Your mom didn't do anything wrong. Not one single thing. Those officers are the ones in trouble. Big trouble." Over the next hour, the hospital room became a command center. Morrison made call after call, his voice carrying weight and authority. The local police chief arrived, a middle-aged white man named Patterson who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last few hours. The hospital administrator came by. A representative from the FBI's Civil Rights Division showed up to take Maya's formal statement. Through it all, Maya sat with her children. She held Lily's hand while the little girl dozed from the pain medication. She listened to Daniel process what had happened, answering his questions as honestly as she could. This wasn't how she'd wanted them to learn about her real job. She'd been planning to tell them when they were older, when they could understand better. But maybe this was the right time after all. Maybe they needed to see that standing up for what's right was worth it, even when it was hard, even when it was scary. Sergeant Chen approached Maya one more time before leaving. "Agent Thompson, I just want you to know, what Hanson did today doesn't represent all of us. Some of us became cops for the right reasons." Maya looked at her steadily. "Then prove it. When Internal Affairs starts asking questions, tell the truth. All of it. Not the version that protects your fellow officers. The truth." Chen nodded slowly. "I will. I promise." After she left, Morrison sat down in the chair next to Maya. "How are you holding up?" "I'm angry. I'm scared. And I'm sad." Maya looked at her sleeping daughter. "But mostly I'm determined. This has to mean something, James. This can't just be another case that gets buried. It won't be. I guarantee you that." Morrison was quiet for a moment. "The mayor wants to meet with you. The press is already all over this story. Those videos from the diner have gone viral." Maya closed her eyes. So much for privacy. So much for keeping her family out of the spotlight. But maybe that was okay. Maybe this was bigger than her comfort level. Then let's give them a story worth telling. 3 days after the incident, Maya stood in front of her bathroom mirror trying to decide if she had the energy for what was about to come. The media circus had been relentless. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. News vans were parked outside her house. The story had exploded way beyond what she'd anticipated. "Cops assault FBI agent and burn her children" was plastered across every news website. The video footage from the diner had been viewed over 15 million times. Think pieces were being written about racial profiling, police brutality, and abuse of power. The story had touched a nerve with people across the country. Lily was home now, her arm heavily bandaged, dealing with the pain but recovering well physically. Emotionally, though, she'd had nightmares every night. She kept asking Maya if the police were coming back, if they were safe. Daniel had become quiet and withdrawn, spending hours in his room instead of playing outside like he usually did. The psychological damage was going to take time to heal. Maybe years. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Her sister Victoria had come to stay with them, taking time off work to help with the kids while Maya dealt with everything. Victoria poked her head into the bathroom. James just called. He's on his way over. Said there's been a development. Maya nodded, splashing cold water on her face. How are the kids? Watching a movie. They're okay for now. Victoria hesitated. Maya, are you sure you want to do this press conference tomorrow? You don't owe anyone your story. Yes, I do. Maya dried her face and turned to her sister. Every parent who's been through something like this and couldn't get justice, I owe them. Every person who's been harassed by cops and couldn't do anything about it. I owe them too. You can't save everyone, no. But I can try to make sure this means something. 20 minutes later, Morrison arrived with a thick folder under his arm and a grim expression on his face. They sat at Maya's dining room table while Victoria took the kids upstairs to give them privacy. It's bad, Morrison said without preamble. Worse than we thought. Maya's stomach tightened. How bad? Morrison opened the folder and pulled out several documents. We dug into Officer Hanson's history. Maya, this isn't his first incident. Not even close. He spread out the papers in front of her. Complaint after complaint. A pattern going back almost 15 years. Multiple accusations of excessive force, racial profiling, harassment. Most had been dismissed as unfounded or the complainants had dropped their cases. A few had resulted in quiet settlements paid by the city. 23 formal complaints, Morrison said. 23. And that's just the ones that were officially filed. God knows how many incidents never got reported. Maya felt sick. She picked up one of the complaints and read through it. A black teenager stopped for suspicious behavior, which turned out to be walking home from basketball practice. Thrown against a car, searched without cause, humiliated in front of his friends. The case was dismissed. Another complaint. A Latino family pulled over for a broken taillight. Hanson had kept them on the side of the road for over an hour, searching their vehicle, questioning their immigration status even though they were all citizens. No formal action taken. Why was he still on the street? Maya demanded. With this record, why wasn't he fired years ago? The police union protected him. His supervisors covered for him. The system failed. Morrison pulled out another document. But here's where it gets interesting. Officer Bradley? Clean record. Solid cop by all accounts, but he'd been partnered with Hanson for 3 months. And he went along with it. Every time. We interviewed several people who'd had encounters with them both. Bradley would stand there uncomfortable but silent while Hanson did his thing. Never stopped him. Never reported him. Just enabled it. Maya thought about Bradley's face in the diner. The way he'd looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. The half-hearted apology in his voice. It didn't matter. He'd still grabbed her. He'd still been part of hurting her family. What about the investigation? Maya asked. The DA is filing charges. Assault, civil rights violations, reckless endangerment of minors. Hanson is facing serious prison time if convicted. Bradley is being charged as an accessory. Morrison paused. The police department is also under federal investigation. The Civil Rights Division is looking into systematic problems with how they've handled complaints. Good. There's more. Morrison pulled out his phone and showed her a news article. This went live an hour ago. The headline read, Local police officers' disturbing pattern of abuse exposed after FBI agent attack. Below it were interviews with some of Hanson's previous victims. People who'd been too afraid or too discouraged to keep fighting before. But now seeing what happened to Maya and her kids, they were coming forward again. A young woman named Keisha talked about being pulled over and searched on her way home from work. Hanson had made her stand outside her car in the rain while he tore apart her vehicle looking for drugs that didn't exist. An older man, named Robert, described being stopped while jogging in his own neighborhood. Hanson accused him of fleeing a crime scene and had him face down on the pavement with a knee on his back for 20 minutes. Story after story. Humiliation after humiliation, and all of it happening in the same small town where people thought they were safe. These people deserve justice too, Maya said quietly. And they're going to get it. The FBI is reopening every single one of these cases. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Maya, this is bigger than one bad cop now. This is about police reform. Accountability, training, everything. Maya rubbed her temples. The weight of it was overwhelming. She just wanted to take her kids out for breakfast to celebrate good grades. Now she was at the center of a national conversation about race and policing. The mayor wants to meet with you. Morrison continued. The police chief has already announced his resignation. The city council is calling for wholesale changes to the police department. And tomorrow's press conference is going to be massive. Every major news outlet wants to be there. I don't want to be famous for this, I know, but you are. And you can either let other people control your narrative, or you can tell your story your way. Maya knew he was right. She'd spent years working in the shadows, investigating cases, building evidence, but staying invisible. That wasn't an option anymore. Over the next few days, Maya learned exactly how invasive media attention could be. Reporters tried to interview her neighbors. Someone dug up her high school yearbook photo. There were think pieces analyzing everything from her career trajectory to her parenting choices. Some people called her a hero. Others accused her of playing the race card or making a bigger deal out of things than necessary. The hate mail started arriving. Angry letters from people who thought she was attacking all police officers. Messages calling her horrible names, making threats. Morrison had to assign protection to her house. Federal agents actually standing guard outside to make sure some crazy person didn't try something stupid. Daniel asked her about it one night at dinner. "Mom, why are people mad at you?" "You didn't do anything wrong. Some people don't like it when you challenge authority," Maya explained. "Even when that authority is wrong. It makes them uncomfortable to think about." "That's dumb." "Yeah, baby, it really is." Lily had been quiet most of the meal, pushing her food around her plate. Her bandages had been changed to smaller ones, but the burns were still visible. She'd asked Maya earlier if her arm was always going to have scars. Maya had been honest. Probably yes. Small ones. A permanent reminder of that day. The night before the press conference, Maya couldn't sleep. She kept going over what she wanted to say, trying to find the right words. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every person who'd been mistreated by people in power and couldn't fight back. Around 2 a.m, she went downstairs to make tea and found Victoria sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone in the dark. "Can't sleep either?" Victoria asked. "Too much on my mind." Maya put the kettle on. "What are you looking at?" "The comments on the news articles." "I shouldn't, I know. But I can't help it." Victoria looked up at her sister. "There are so many people supporting you, sharing their own stories, saying thank you for speaking up. And the other ones, ignore them. They're just noise." Victoria set down her phone. "Maya, I'm so proud of you. You know that, right? You've always been the brave one." "I don't feel brave. I feel tired and angry and sad. That's what bravery is, though. Doing the right thing even when it's hard, even when you're scared." Maya made her tea and sat down across from her sister. "The kids are going to remember this for the rest of their lives." "Yeah, but not just the bad parts. They're going to remember that their mom stood up for what was right, that she didn't back down even when things got hard. That's a pretty good lesson. I hope you're right." The day of the press conference arrived too quickly. Maya got dressed carefully, choosing a professional but approachable outfit. Morrison had arranged for the conference to be held at FBI headquarters rather than at the police station or city hall. It was a power move, a way of saying that this was a federal matter now. The room was packed with reporters, cameras, lights. Maya had given briefings before, testified in court, interrogated suspects. But this felt different. This was personal in a way. Her work never had been. Morrison stood beside her at the podium along with the deputy director who'd flown in from Washington. The police chief who'd replaced the resigned one was there too, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Maya stepped up to the microphone, looking out at the sea of faces and cameras. Somewhere in the back, she knew Victoria was watching the live stream with the kids. She'd told Daniel and Lily that they could watch if they wanted to, but she'd understand if they weren't ready. She thought about all the people who'd shared their stories over the past week. All the times they'd been dismissed or ignored. All the fear and frustration they'd carried with them. "My name is Special Agent Maya Thompson," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "And 3 weeks ago I took my children out for breakfast to celebrate my son's good report card. By the time we left that diner, both of my children had been burned by scalding coffee as a result of an encounter with 2 police officers who decided we didn't belong there." The room was absolutely silent except for the clicking of cameras. "I want to be clear about something. I'm not speaking today just as an FBI agent. I'm speaking as a mother whose children were hurt. As a black woman who's experienced discrimination. and as a citizen who believes we can and must do better. She went on to tell the whole story, leaving nothing out. The unnecessary ID demand, the escalation, the violence, the complete lack of concern for her injured children. She talked about the pattern of complaints against Hansen that had been ignored for years. But this story isn't really about me, Maya continued. It's about everyone who's had a similar experience and didn't have the platform or the protection to seek justice. It's about the systemic failures that allow officers like Hansen to continue abusing their power year after year, and it's about what we're going to do to fix it. She laid out specific demands: mandatory bias training, civilian oversight committees, transparent complaint processes, consequences for officers who abuse their authority. Some people will say I'm being too harsh on police, Maya said, that I'm making all officers look bad because of one person's actions. But I'm not here to attack police. I'm here to demand accountability, because the vast majority of police officers are good people trying to do a difficult job, and those good officers are hurt by the bad ones too. Every time someone like Hansen abuses his power, it makes everyone less safe and erodes trust in the institution. She paused, looking directly into the camera. My daughter asked me yesterday if her arm will always have scars. I had to tell her yes. She'll carry physical scars from this encounter for the rest of her life. But I'll be damned if she carries emotional scars from believing that injustice is just something we have to accept. The press conference ended with thunderous questions, but Maya had said what she needed to say. As she stepped away from the podium, Morrison squeezed her shoulder. "You did good," he said quietly. Maya just nodded, exhausted but relieved. It was done. The story was out there. Now it was time to see if anything would actually change. 6 months had passed since that terrible morning at the diner. Maya stood in the back of the crowded community center auditorium, watching people file in for the town hall meeting. It was standing room only. Every seat was taken and people lined the walls waiting to hear what came next. So much had changed in half a year. Officer Hansen had been convicted on all charges: assault, civil rights violations, reckless endangerment. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before finding him guilty. He was currently serving an 8-year prison sentence. His lawyer had tried to argue for leniency, painting him as a dedicated officer who made a mistake. But the mountain of evidence against him, the parade of victims who testified, and those damning videos from the diner made it impossible for the jury to see him as anything but what he was. A bully with a badge, Officer Bradley had taken a plea deal. He'd cooperated with investigators, testifying against Hansen and admitting his own role in enabling the abuse. He'd lost his job, been demoted in rank, and was required to complete extensive training on civil rights and ethics before he'd ever be allowed to wear a badge again. Some people thought he got off too easy. Maya wasn't sure what she thought. He'd been a coward, yes, but at least he'd eventually told the truth. The police chief who'd resigned had been replaced by someone new, someone from outside the department who'd made reform her entire mission. Chief Angela Williams was the first black woman to lead the department, and she wasn't messing around. She'd cleaned house, forcing out officers with problematic records and bringing in fresh blood trained in de-escalation and community policing. But the changes went deeper than just personnel. The FBI's civil rights investigation had uncovered systematic problems with how complaints against officers were handled. The whole process had been redesigned from the ground up. Now there was a civilian oversight board with real power. Complaints were tracked in a public database. Officers with multiple complaints faced actual consequences, instead of just shuffled to different assignments. Mandatory training on implicit bias and cultural sensitivity was now required annually for every single officer. Body cameras were mandatory for all patrol officers, with strict penalties for malfunctioning cameras. The police union had fought these changes hard, but public pressure and the threat of federal intervention had forced them to accept the new reality. And it wasn't just the police department. The whole town had been forced to confront uncomfortable truths about itself. The city council had held forums on race and policing. Schools had updated their curriculum to include lessons on civil rights and systemic inequality. Local businesses had diversity training. It was messy and imperfect, and a lot of people were resistant to change, but it was happening. Maya watched all of this unfold from a strange position. She'd become a reluctant public figure, someone people recognized on the street. Some thanked her. Others glared. She'd received awards and recognition from civil rights organizations. She'd been asked to speak at conferences and universities. The FBI had even created a new position for her, working on police reform initiatives across the country. But what mattered most to her was sitting in the third row. Daniel and Lily, along with her sister Victoria, waiting for the meeting to start. The kids were doing better. Not perfect, but better. They'd been in therapy, working through the trauma. Daniel had started asking questions about justice and fairness, about why people treat each other badly sometimes. He wanted to be a lawyer when he grew up now, he'd announced last week. He wanted to help people like his mom did. Lily's arm had healed as well as could be expected. The scars were still visible, thin white lines on her brown skin that probably wouldn't fade completely. She was self-conscious about them sometimes, but she was learning to accept them. Her therapist had helped her reframe those scars as marks of survival, evidence that she'd been through something hard and come out the other side. The town hall meeting was called to order, and Chief Williams stepped up to the microphone. She spent the first 15 minutes outlining all the changes that had been implemented, the data showing reduced complaints and increased community trust, the new initiatives moving forward. It was impressive, truly. But Maya knew this was just the beginning. Real change took time, consistency, and vigilance. Then Chief Williams did something unexpected. "I'd like to invite Special Agent Maya Thompson to come up and share some words if she's willing." Maya felt her stomach drop. She hadn't prepared anything. But Morrison, who was sitting near the front, turned and gave her an encouraging nod. All around the room, people were looking for her, craning their necks to see. Daniel caught her eye and gave her a thumbs up. That was all the encouragement she needed. Maya made her way to the front of the auditorium. When she reached the microphone, she took a moment to look out at the crowd. She saw faces of all colors and ages. Some she recognized from the diner that day. Others were people who'd reached out to her over the past months with their own stories. And some were just concerned citizens who wanted their community to be better. "I didn't prepare a speech," Maya began honestly, "but I guess that's okay because what I want to say is pretty simple. Change is hard. It's uncomfortable. It forces us to look at things we'd rather ignore and admit truths we'd rather deny. But it's also necessary." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "6 months ago, my children and I experienced something that no family should ever have to go through. We were harassed, assaulted, and injured by people who were supposed to protect us. And for a while I was angry. I'm still angry sometimes, if I'm being honest. But I'm also hopeful." Maya gestured to Chief Williams. "Because of what happened to us, real changes are being made. Not just here, but in communities across the country that are looking at this town as an example. Other police departments are examining their own practices. Other families are finding the courage to speak up about their experiences. And that matters." She spotted Rosie in the crowd, the diner owner who'd been so kind that awful morning. Next to her was Betty, the waitress. They both smiled at Maya. "But here's the thing I've learned over these past 6 months. Change doesn't happen because of one person or one incident. It happens because communities decide together that